All right. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Think Business Live. I'm extra excited for this interview because, as many of you know, we're doing a mental health awareness week. So I thought, no better time than to interview my therapist, Dr. Paul Kaye, who's a clinical psychologist, PhD. Dr. Kaye, I think I've been going to you for, I want to say, over 17 years. Yeah, I mean, because Jacob was, a baby when I started, and now he's going to be a senior in high school. So thanks for helping me through the years. And today I'm looking forward to talking about just mental health awareness in general. My thought of kind of launching and dedicating this week to mental health awareness was a recent documentary that I watched on HBO called The Weight of Gold. And it's basically a movie by Michael Phelps that talks about the anxiety that many, many Olympians go through, specifically him, and talking about how he had contemplated suicide. And it really threw me back because I don't think of Michael Phelps and all of these athletes as people who, would have gone through that much stress, but they do. And so I just thought, well, you know what? There's so much talk in the news about stress, depression, isolation with COVID that I wanted to really dedicate a week to this. And so I'm so glad that you're here because I always love talking to you. But I thought we could maybe kick off and talk about resiliency and the skills that people need, during these times.
Sure. And by the way, you mentioned Michael Phelps. I think many people heard a couple of weeks ago Michelle Obama talk about her experience with what she referred to as low-grade depression.
Yeah.
So once you understand the architecture of the brain, we all realize that nobody is invulnerable to developing symptoms of anxiety and depression. And since our world has turned upside down, what was right is now left, and what was up is now down. The human brain is designed to deal with familiarity. So when you start to change the parameters of how we live our life, it generally upsets our autonomic nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the autonomic nervous system is a part of the nervous system that we don't have to think about. So I don't have to think about encouraging my heart to continue to beat and my lungs to inhale and exhale to have oxygen. The autonomic nervous system governs those kinds of subsystems. So automatic. It also actually is quite sensitive to stress. And when we're under circumstances of stress, it automatically changes the way our body responds to things.
Yeah.
So understanding that anyone can get triggered, and half of the autonomic nervous system from evolutionary times is designed to deal with survival. And
Yeah.
so when we're under stress, our body acts as if survival is at stake.
Yeah. That fight or flight.
Fight or flight is all part of the sympathetic nervous system. And it's automatic. You don't have to think about it. The body just goes there.
Yeah. So when we're there, which I think a lot of people are, I know I have been there over the last, couple months. Well, I mean, not, many times in my life too, but, how do you get back to center? How do you find, that next pace of, resiliency?
Okay. So if what our body is reacting to is disequilibrium, that is, something's changed, and our body reads that as danger warning, training your body or recognizing that your body is going into fight flight is the first step. Okay. And depending on what we're dealing with right now, we're dealing with a virus that does put us all in harm's way. So the body will continue to act in an as-if situation to protect us. actually behaviorally imposing routines that are calming and actually calm down the body is quite important, and understanding how to do that.
Yeah.
So, for example, let me just give you some concrete examples that come from some of the things that my patients say to me on a daily basis. They come into my office and say, you know, I was watching the world news and the nighttime news for hours on end, and I felt like I was going to jump out of my skin.
Yeah.
So part of self-regulation is, I'm going to borrow a concept that a man named Fred Pine, who's a well-known developmental psychologist, it's called optimal strain. Understanding what your set point is for triggering yourself. So while some people can watch several hours of news a day and not get triggered, many more people actually, it leads to actually encouraging a stress reaction.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with social media. What's enough and what's too much? So the interesting thing is, no two people have the same set point or threshold for tolerating these things. So you have to study at what point enough becomes too much. That's part of self-regulation. So, for example, many people, I say, don't watch more than a half hour to an hour of news stuff that is very upsetting. We don't want people to be uninformed and in denial,
Right.
but we also want to make sure that people aren't overexposing themselves to both news and social media. For people that are very concerned with their finances, and there are many people right now that need to, it's a reality. Paying attention, keeping one eye on the stock market if you own stocks every hour of the day is more likely to put you into that sympathetic nervous system mode where your body is going to stay in a survival mode.
Yeah. Dr. Kaye, I always love how you can frame certain things that, that I can just speak for myself that I'm experiencing, but I love, and then feel like I can now have a deeper understanding to give myself permission as I can define it. And so when you talk about the set points, like I find myself sometimes not going 1 or 2 days without watching any news because I just can't, right? I just don't have the capacity. And then I'll catch up the next day. And I'll feel like I have to watch like 2 or 3 episodes of Friends just to kind of like laugh and do something that isn't so stressful. So, but just the way that you talk about self-regulating and knowing your own triggers, I see that in business a lot too, but you've given me a new way to define it. And so I just want to talk about changing and breaking habits, because sometimes, for people to recognize what their trigger point is, to, what their optimal strain is, but they're used to, I grew up, my parents watched the news for an hour and a half, or the 6 o'clock news and the 10 o'clock news, and they're in like just a pattern that they can't break. How do you break a pattern into a new habit?
Okay, well, this is a very unprecedented situation because every day we can't turn away or ignore the fact that potentially any one of us is in harm's way
Right.
as it relates to the virus. So there's a new way of explaining why the universe is expanding. So what studies in astronomy are indicating that all the planets and the galaxies are moving further away from one another, and we don't quite know the mechanism that's causing that, but the concept is dark matter. It's an invisible force that's pushing in a direction. So I would like to say that in this time period, it's not dark matter, but it's the ever-present, whether we're thinking about it or not, awareness that at any moment we can be in harm's way. And so you can't ignore that adds to the level of stress.
Right.
So ordinarily, if you operate on a scale from 1 to 10, anxiety, depression, a 1 or a 2, during this period, it's going to push you to a 3 to 6 as a just a set point.
Right.
When you think of the additive factor of just living in harm's way right now, you have to appreciate how much more can you tolerate being exposed to in terms of the everyday stresses that we still have to deal with before getting fully triggered.
Yeah.
So that's just an important thing to keep in mind. So things that diffuse the level of stress that's been added to our life, this add-on that's also automatic. Nobody can ignore that. One of the things that you just mentioned is, rather than watching the news, add humor to your life.
Yeah.
There are a lot of TV shows. There are good old Woody Allen joke books, cartoons. I like watching TV westerns these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you find that any one of those things serves to allow you to feel more calmer, to feel less stressed, that's one of the go-to resiliency tools that should be in your tool chest to help you with it.
Staying on the topic of resiliency, I just would like to link it to breath. I think the breath is so important. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of, breathing, not forgetting to breathe? I mean, we take approximately 20,000 breaths a day. It's about 7.3 million breaths a year. And I think a lot of us don't think about the importance of just breathing.
Okay. Well, let me put it in terms of brain architecture. So the exhale actually moves our autonomic nerve system from fight, flight, from, hey, there's an emergency, I'm in a survival mode, where my heart rate, my respiration rate are increasing. The exhale in breath actually moves that part of the autonomic nervous system to the parasympathetic branch. There are two divisions of the autonomic nervous system. The parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system is about being relaxed and calm. So actually, when we're calm, literally, our heart rate and respiration rate actually decrease. It actually creates a biological calmness. So with breathing exercises, what many people teach is 4 seconds in and 6 to 8 seconds out actually moves the autonomic nervous system into a calming position, not survival, but safety. So breathing as a taking 5 or 10 minutes out, however many periods of that during the day work for you, is an excellent exercise, as is walking, dancing, jogging, and other things that have a rhythm to it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the rhythm thing is very interesting.
Yeah, tell me.
If we think back developmentally, what's the most calming thing we do for infants?
We just rock them.
We rock them.
Right.
We sing little songs. We hum. We touch, rub their backs. All of those things are rhythmic. And so all of that stuff, which is nonverbal in nature, actually gets recorded on the right side of the brain, and we never forget it. And that's probably an unconscious reason why people are attracted to things that are rhythmic, whether it's listening to the waves breaking in the ocean or music that has a rhythmic nature to it, poetry that rhymes, so on and so forth. There's a basic appeal because it's built into our nervous system. It's baked in from the very first several years of our life before we had words.
That's so interesting. You know, when I was in college, I started listening to classical music. My grandfather used to listen to it when I was a kid. And when I could only study when I was listening to classical music. So I would listen to it, and it would increase my retention and everything just by listening. It totally relaxed me. And my daughter listens to music when she, not classical, but just regular music, when she does work or anything, because it totally just relaxes her nervous system.
Yeah, right hemisphere, pre-verbal mode. That's into our nervous system. But let me give you an example of being in rhythm socially. So another tool, resiliency skill, is actually having regular contact with people that you care about.
Yeah.
Where there's a good fit between you and them. Example in my own life is I moved up north last year. I once every 2 weeks I meet with 6 of my friends from Huntington Woods and other areas. We all go on Zoom and have an hour and a half of chatting. And there's something about shared experiences. So we remember moments when we play tennis together, and we went to movies and books and novels that we've discussed, and we joke, and it creates a rhythm. And I can tell you the nervous system impact is calming.
Mm-hmm.
So maintaining contact during a time period where we're emphasizing social distancing is quite important. Fortunately, we now have things like Zoom and podcasts, Skype and other mechanisms, FaceTime, to stay in touch with people.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Kaye, you always have so many great things to say. And I like that you brought up that, you know, doing the Zoom and connecting with people even via video, I think is important. I'd like to talk a little bit about, because there's so much talk in the news about people feeling isolated, people feeling more anxious, more depression. And, you know, I always think, I think sometimes people don't know what to look for. People don't know necessarily what to say if they see somebody who's struggling. So how do you identify anxiety within yourself or others, or depression? And then how do you approach somebody who maybe needs some help?
When you say approach somebody, do you mean seeking professional help, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like a parent to a child in this situation.
Okay. Well, a parent to a child, meaning where where you notice your child is
maybe struggling, right? Maybe struggling, and you're looking for those signs that they may need to go talk to somebody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the classic signs. Do you want me to talk about it in adults or children, or both?
Both, if you could, please.
Okay. So the classic signs we'll start with adults would be for anxiety and depression. Anxiety is more obvious because people usually are acutely aware when they're anxious that there's something that feels different in their body. They wake up feeling fearful or anxious. They notice that they're not able to concentrate as well. Their memory isn't working as well. They're not as efficient at work. They have difficulties with sleeping. They actually have an increased appetite or a loss of appetite, as well as sexual drive either being higher or lower. So those are kind of many things that just begin to show up when people are anxious or depressed. For children may or may not use words as much. So you may see children. A healthy child is always busy. They're always doing something. So all of a sudden, if you see a child who doesn't feel like coloring or watching TV, sits in a corner looking out the window, seems less interested in doing things that ordinarily playing games or calling their friends, seeing their friends, even though right now that can be more complicated. Another way in which children will express their anxiety and depression is through their drawings. So younger children, I'm not talking about teenagers, I'll ask younger children or have parents just have them start making drawings. And it's amazing how the unspoken experiences of what's going on inside comes out on a piece of paper with crayons or pencils. You'll see scenes that are showing a child feeling isolated from their social group, feeling down. Rather than the sun shining, it's raining. All kinds of variations on things that will actually, in nonverbal ways, express that something's going on that's a source of distress for children.
Oh, that's good. And talk about asking for help, if you would. I find, I'm a business coach, which I know you know, but, I find a lot of times people are vulnerable to ask for help. Excuse me, vulnerable to ask for help. And so, when someone is, whether it's a child or whether it's an adult, how does someone ask for help?
Well, I mean, if it's for a child, I think the first thing would be, before we think about asking for help, the adult just sensing that there's something going on in their children and actually sitting down with them and saying what's going on. If the child shrugs their shoulders, parents can use their own experiences. I don't know about you right now, but I miss seeing my friends, and I miss going to the movies. There are so many things that have been taken out of my life. I imagine that you must feel the same way. So before we even think about mental health services, I'd like to see parents make themselves more emotionally available to encourage talk of this sort. But one of my colleagues, I don't know her personally. She's at the University of Miami. Her name is Annette L.A. Greca, Greca, or Greca. Yeah. She has written one of the most incredible manuals called Helping Children and Families Cope with the COVID-19 Pandemic. It's a 46-page guidebook written for parents and children, providing exercises and advice on self-care, on how to identify symptoms, coping skills. So I would really recommend that.
Okay.
You can probably find it online.
Well, say the name again, Dr. Kaye.
It's Dr. Annette, Annette L.A., and then Greca. And it's called Helping Children and Families Cope. It's one of the most helpful guides that I've seen. She's actually internationally known for her work with children who deal with anxiety and depression as well.
Oh, that sounds like an amazing book.
Yeah.
And I just want to, can you spend another minute or two talking about how parents can make themselves more emotionally available? Because I think that's a pretty powerful statement and thing to do. And I think sometimes if you're not that way, you need maybe a tool or two to raise your awareness.
So I'm going to blend my answer in with another concept, which is practicing daily gratitude. So this is a form of positive thinking. For example, my wife puts on her Facebook account every day a note, today's silver lining. So during hard times, if we only think about the worst of the worst, it's so easy to make negative predictions and think catastrophically and in all or nothing ways. Positive thinking is an incredible tool that can be very helpful to remind us that all is not lost, that it's not all or nothing, that this too shall pass. By the way, nationally, as much as people worry about dying from the virus, only 1.5% of the population are actually dying from it.
Right.
So gratitude can come in various forms. And so to come back to your question, One thing that this has done as a result of many more people staying at home is it gives parents and children more time to be together. And while parents do need to focus on their work if they're working from home, taking breaks is a very important thing. Why not use some of those periods of taking 20-minute breaks to spend time with your child, talking, playing a game? So that provides a kind of a nice opportunity to be grateful under these circumstances, that it's actually serving to promote attachment experiences with our children.
Yeah, I love that. There's a lot of gratitude that I have felt, and a well-needed pause that I got during COVID. But I agree. I've been recently, not every day, but a lot of days, have a gratitude journal where I just kind of write some of the things I'm grateful for. And it's amazing what even just comes up when I take a moment to just kind of be silent in that. But yeah, I think that's so important.
If I can say one other thing from my own experience. So one of the things that I'm grateful for is during this period where my 3 granddaughters, 2 live in Denver, 1 lives in Ann Arbor, are at home and socially separated from their friends, I'm always thinking, how can I help my family? So I'm grateful that I came up with the idea that every Sunday night at 8:30, I will take them to bed. Now, how can I do that? We're separated by varying distances. We all get on Zoom. The kids crawl into bed. The kids in Denver are with my granddaughter in Ann Arbor, and I tell them stories about a little girl named Josette from Toulouse, France. I know nothing about her. I make up the stories as I go.
Yeah.
I read them books, and we tell jokes together. I read them jokes, and I thought, well, what else could I add to their life? Something that they can look forward to. So for every 20 jokes they get, they win a surprise from me, and I send them in the mail toys and other things, and I can't tell you how much they look forward. So I'm grateful during these difficult circumstances. I don't think the thought would have even come to my mind that I have yet another way of connecting with my grandchildren.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, Dr. Kaye. That's special. So I do have one question, talking about kind of where people can find help, and where can people, find help? Those that can afford, a therapist, those that maybe are in network, out of network, like, those that need it for, that need it for free. Where can people go?
Well, of course, for those that have insurance, they can use their insurance. And the good news is that most of the larger insurance companies, Blue Cross, Aetna, United Healthcare, they've waived the copay. So if you had to pay $20 per session, the insurance companies during this period is picking that up as a special adaptation to the financial crunch that people are going under, are faced with right now. I really think that that's a really sweet thing. That's one. So you can look at your insurance, go to the online to the network. Better yet, you call your physician or somebody who knows somebody that's a psychotherapist and get a good recommendation. For people that don't have insurance, community mental health is available. Community mental health, there's what we call it, in every area of the United States, there are catchment areas where they have to have a mental health clinic. And the charge is on the ability to pay. So it's on a sliding scale. Many people pay nothing and can have weekly or bi-weekly sessions. Some people pay a nominal amount depending on what your salary is.
Yeah.
So,
great. Dr. Kaye, you're always a wealth of knowledge. I can't thank you enough. leave everybody with this. Finish this sentence. In 2020, one thing that we all need to individually do is
cherish our relationships and our support system.
Yeah, it's great. All right, good. Dr. Kaye, I always love talking to you. I could talk to you for hours. And I appreciate you sharing so much great content today. It's going to help so many people, not only who are listening, but the replays. And, this will live on for a long, long time. But I just want to thank you for a couple things, talking about breath and the power of breath and how to get yourself into a calming position. And knowing kind of what your optimal limits are, I think was key. Finding your rhythm, and of course the book that you recommended, which is Helping Children and Families Cope Through COVID. So I can't thank you enough. How can people, if they want to get a hold of you, Dr. Kaye, get a hold of you?
Well, a number I can be reached at is 248-399-2122. And John, I just wanted to clarify that book on helping children and families cope. It's not a book, so you can't buy it at a bookstore. It's a manual that I think the American Psychological Association and the author will just make available to people. Like, you can download it.
Got it. Okay, cool. That's good to know. Thanks, Dr. Kaye.
All right. Be well.
Dr. Kaye, thank you for today. Thank you for everything you continually do for me. I appreciate you a ton. And stay safe, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care.